first story. Entitled OP threw his son in boarding school. Ignored his son's calls for help when he was getting bullied and abused in school. And now OP is having a breakdown because his son abandoned him and went NC, claiming OP failed as his father. I always believed in discipline. Not cruelty, not abuse, just firm, unwavering discipline. My father raised me that way, and I turned out fine. That was my excuse, my justification for everything I did to Ryan. But looking back, I see it now. I wasn't teaching him how to be strong. I was just making sure he had no room to be weak. Ryan was a difficult child. He had too much energy, too much defiance, and too little respect for authority. He had a habit of pushing boundaries, testing patience, and acting like nothing had real consequences. His teachers called often, saying he skipped school or mouthed off in class. I'd ground him, take away his games, his freedom, none of it mattered. He found ways to rebel anyway. Then came the incident with our neighbor, Angela. She had a baby and was already high-strung, always complaining about noise, about Ryan riding his bike too close to her driveway, about anything she could. One day, she came to my door, livid, saying Ryan had thrown firecrackers near her while she was holding her baby. She claimed it had scared the child so badly that he nearly stopped breathing. She was shaking with rage, demanding I do something about him. When I confronted Ryan, he barely reacted. He brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, that she was overreacting, that he hadn't meant any harm. But there was no remorse, no concern, just that same arrogance he always carried. He even accused Angela of being the one who harassed him, claiming she had sixed her dog on him, shoved him off his bike, and screamed at him just for playing outside. Maybe there was truth to that, maybe not. I didn't care. That was it for me. I had warned him too many times. If nothing else had worked, then it was time for real consequences. I made the decision that night Ryan needed structure, discipline, and an environment that would force him to grow up. A strict boarding school seemed like the answer. It had glowing reviews and a reputation for turning troubled boys into disciplined men. I didn't ask for Ryan's input. By the time I told him, it was already set in stone. He pleaded, swore he'd change, and said he'd do anything to stay. I didn't waver. I told myself this was for his own good. A few weeks later, he was gone. At first, he called frequently, but the anger in his voice made it hard to take him seriously. He ranted about how miserable it was, how unfair I had been, and how he hated me for sending him away. I brushed it off as teenage rebellion. He had to adjust. This was a lesson in responsibility. But the calls changed over time. They became desperate. He told me he was being bullied, not just in the usual way. He said they humiliated him, doing things like rubbing their genitals on his face, pissing on his clothes and bed, making him do their chores, and stealing his food. I told him to handle it, to stand up for himself, thinking he was lying just to get back home. After that, the calls stopped. I assumed it meant he had finally adjusted. That maybe he had made friends, or at least learned how to survive in that environment. But when he came home for a weekend visit, I knew something was wrong. Ryan was thinner, his cheekbones more pronounced. His clothes hung off him, and his usual spark, the defiance, the energy, the attitude was gone. He barely spoke, and when he did, he avoided my eyes. There were bruises on his arms, dark ones along his ribs when his shirt lifted. I asked him what happened. He mumbled something about football practice. Something inside me knew he was lying, but I let it go. I told myself he'd be fine. I had no idea that I had already lost him. Ryan returned to school after that weekend, and I assumed things would get better. He hadn't said much, but I convinced myself that was normal. He was adjusting, learning discipline, and growing stronger. But looking back, that wasn't growth. It was resignation. I barely heard from him in the months that followed. The phone calls had stopped, and the few times he answered mine, his voice was flat, lifeless. No complaints, no anger, just indifference. It should have scared me. It should have made me realize something was wrong. But I was busy with my work and had spent so much time telling myself that this was the best thing for him that I ignored every warning sign. He came home one last time for graduation. When I picked him up, I barely recognized him. The boy I had sent away was loud, stubborn, and full of life. The one that came back was hollow. His shoulders hunched forward slightly, as if he had learned to make himself small. He barely spoke during the car ride home, just short responses, mostly nods or shakes of his head. His face was emotionless. That night, he went straight to his room. No excitement, no celebration. Just closed the door and went to bed early. The next morning, he was gone. At first, I thought he had just gone for a walk. But when I checked his room, I found a letter on his bed. I still have it. I've read it so many times I've memorized every word. He wrote about the first few weeks at the school, how the boys singled him out, how they made him their personal servant. They took his food, forced him to do their laundry, and knocked him down in the hallways. When he complained to the staff, they ignored him. Then it got worse. They started locking him in a closet at night. At first, it was just a few hours. Then whole nights. Then entire weekends. No food, no water. Just the darkness, the suffocating silence, the sheer terror of knowing they had complete control over him. They didn't stop at isolation. They beat him, humiliated him, and treated him like something less than human. He stopped fighting back because it only made things worse. The staff never stepped in. He wrote about the night he stopped feeling anything. The night they hurt him in ways I can't bring myself to say out loud. The night he realized no one was coming to save him. Not the teachers. Not the police. Not his father. That was the last time he begged for help. By the time he came home, he wasn't my son anymore. He was just a shell of the boy I had raised. And I had done that to him. His final words in the letter haunt me. I may be running away now, but you abandoned me years ago. You won't see me again. I searched for him. Called his friends, filed a missing persons report, checked every shelter I could think of. I even drove through the city at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But I never found him. For months, I told myself he'd come back. That this was just another act of rebellion, that he'd run out of money, that he'd get tired of being alone and come home. I kept his room exactly the same and left the porch light on every night, just in case. But he never did. At first, I couldn't fully believe what was in the letter. I told myself he had exaggerated, that maybe he had been bullied, but not that badly. Maybe he was just trying to make me feel guilty, to punish me the only way he could. I clung to that belief for a long time. It was easier than facing the alternative that I had thrown my own son into hell and ignored him every time he screamed for help. Then, one night, I got drunk. Really drunk. I pulled out the letter and read it again for the 100th time. And for the first time, I didn't just read it, I let myself believe it. What if he hadn't exaggerated? What if every single word was true? What if I had let my son be tortured? The realization hit like a gut punch, deep and hollow. My stomach turned, my chest ached, and my hands shook. I read it again and again. My vision blurred from either the alcohol or the shame. I remembered the way he flinched when I touched his shoulder at graduation. The way he never made eye contact. The way his hands trembled when he picked up a glass. I had seen the signs. They had been right in front of me. And I had walked away. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up. But it didn't make me feel any lighter. The weight was still there, pressing down on me, and I knew it was never going to leave. That was 2 years ago. I don't know where Ryan is. If he's alive. If he's safe. If he ever thinks about me. I still leave the porch light on. I don't know if it's out of hope or penance. Maybe both. I drink more than I should. It dulls the noise in my head, but not enough. Nothing is enough. I go to work, come home, sit in the dark, and let the silence drown me. The house is too quiet now. No slammed doors, no loud music, no muttered sarcasm, no laughter. Just silence. And in that silence, I hear him the most. I imagine him as that 16-year-old boy, begging me not to send him away. I imagine him at 17, getting abused. I imagine him at 18, sitting in his childhood bedroom one last time, knowing he would never come back. I wonder where he is now. If he has a job, if he has a home, if he still wakes up in a cold sweat, remembering what they did to him. I wonder if he hates me. And I wonder if I deserve it. Because no matter how much I tell myself that I was just trying to be a good father, just trying to teach him discipline, the truth is simple. I failed him. And now, I'll never get the chance to make it right. Comments. Comment 1. You didn't fail your son. You destroyed him. You saw him begging for help, screaming for you to listen, and you turned your back on him every single time. You didn't just miss the warning signs, you chose to ignore them. You told yourself he needed discipline when all he needed was a father who gave a damn. And now you want to sit here, drink yourself into a stupor, and wallow in self-pity. Nah, you don't get my sympathy. You deserve to live with this for the rest of your life. I just hope Ryan is out there somewhere, thriving without you and never looking back. Comment 2. You sent your son to a literal torture camp because he was a difficult teenager. Then, when he told you he was being abused, you doubled down and told him to toughen up. You know what the worst part is? Even after he came back a broken shell of a person, you still didn't believe him. You listened to his pleadings and told yourself he was just being dramatic. I hope he never comes back. I hope he's out there healing, surrounded by people who actually love him. And I hope you sit in that empty house, drinking yourself into oblivion, because that's the closest thing to justice you're ever going to get. Comment 3. Man, F you. Seriously. Your son was crying, begging, pleading for you to help him, and you decided he was lying. What kind of father does that? You sentenced him to hell and then acted shocked when he never recovered. And now you have the audacity to sit around feeling bad about it. Oh, poor you. Let me play the world's smallest violin. If Ryan has even an ounce of luck, he's happy, successful, and never thinks about you again. You don't deserve forgiveness. You deserve to rot in that miserable, silent house for the rest of your pathetic life.